Hey folks, a quick video here being that I'm in the middle of putting together a marathon of new material on Alien. And my favourite part of this movie has always been the reveal of what's known as the Space Jockey, which is also called the cockpit in the Giger's Alien art book. This design always impressed me because it seemed to convey something truly alien and beyond our comprehension. How can this organic thing be fused with a machine? Was it born like that? Did it become fused with the machine later? Did it choose to be fused, or was it forced to do so? When it was alive, was it able to reproduce? How did it eat? Did it live a life of pain and discomfort being fused like this? Why does it have a spine-like connection between its face and its body? There's so many questions to ask about this thing, and I always found myself drawing the same conclusion. We can't know the answers because this thing is truly alien to us, and therefore beyond our current earthbound reference of understanding. And this gives the scene a brilliant sense of mystery and, ironically, authenticity that hardly any science fiction movies have been able to match. But having delved much more deeply into Giger's designs recently, I've now come to the conclusion that there is human logic to this design. After all, the designer Ager was a human being. But the logic here falls outside of the film's literal plot points. On that level, it's just a dead creature that was used as a host for a chest-bursting alien. But if you look at this thing in terms of symbolism or dream logic, a lot more sense can be made of it. In fact, the irrationality of the design can be considered to be a clue that formal logic doesn't really apply here. How could a facehugger connect to this giant head, especially if there's a spine-like protrusion coming out of the face? The spine thing could be thought of as a dead facehugger, but it's too big, and as we learn from Kane's impregnation later, facehuggers disconnect from the victim before the embryo alien bursts its way out. And the head is too big for a facehugger to wrap its fingers around anyway. This all makes no sense, and so why not just look at it symbolically? Before we do that though, a word about the movie Prometheus. In that film, the Space Jockey is reinterpreted so that the organic humanoid is not actually fused with the machinery, but was simply clamped in by an elaborate mechanism, with the spinal feature being an inorganic attachment to the helmet. But that's not what we see in Alien. This creature has no helmet, and the spinal protrusion is made of bone and is attached to the bone of the skull. I think what's happened here is that H.R. Giger, whose images were always physically impossible and therefore symbolic, I think he had designed this creature with symbolism as his guide more so than the literal plot of the film, and I don't think he explained it all properly to Ridley Scott, or if he did, Scott abandoned Giger's meaning intentionally when he made Prometheus. And so in Prometheus, an attempt is made to turn the symbolic details of the Space Jockey into literal plot points that can be explained in formal narrative logic. While I do like the engineer's story element in Prometheus, I think it mismatches what we see here in the first film, and so I think Prometheus is better off being considered as a separate science fiction story altogether. And for one thing, humanising this alien creature defeats the sense of total mystery that makes the scene so strong. However, in defence of the Prometheus interpretation, Giger's design does appear to show a glass bubble around the head, like a helmet, but this isn't in the movie. Okay, so what kind of symbolism is at work here? Well, a comparison with the rest of Giger's artwork for the Alien film is a good way to go. It's well known that his designs for the film are full of biomechanical sexual elements, but I'll specify some details for you that are important relating to this creature. In these sketches, the facehugger design is cross-symbolised with the features of the helmet. Both have ribbed tube-like protrusions extending from the mouth and down over the neck. The facehugger itself has the appearance of female genitalia, and at the same time it orally rapes the host by shoving a tube down their throat. Screenwriter Dan O'Bannon has apparently talked about it as a rape metaphor. And so if we look at the helmet design here, we can see two more features related to rape. First, a tube pointing down from the mouth area into the throat. This is on the helmet itself, and therefore seems to be symbolic of what the facehugger will shove down the throat. And second, there's a phallic tube on the top with a light tip on the end. The alien's head itself is a much larger erect phallic shape. This kind of symbolism may seem bizarre, but Giger did this kind of stuff all the time. Go do an image search for Giger artwork and you'll find endless examples. The adult alien is a combination of humanoid and industrial tube-like features and has teeth that appear to be made of metal or very hard glass instead of bone. That fits with the biomechanoid themes of the Space Jockey. And Giger even says in the Giger's Art book that this creature is a biomechanoid, not that it's a humanoid strapped into a seat. Even in the film, Captain Dallas says that the pilot seems to have grown out of the chair. So sure, Ridley Scott must have at least understood it on that level as they were making the film. I think it was just abandoned in Prometheus because they couldn't find a way to create a formal logic explanation of what we see here. In terms of horror psychology, I think the most logical take on this creature is that it's a foreshadow of what's going to happen to Cain. Oral impregnation, and the unimaginable pain and terror of having the creature eat its way out of the stomach. So I think the spinal face attachment represents the smothering of a facehugger, even though it can't be at the literal plot level. In other words, we have the two stages of suffocating oral raping facehugger and chest burster. Those two forms of suffering are presented in one, with the host victim paralysed in eternal pain from both. As for that giant telescope or gun or whatever the hell we're allowed to assume it to be, in typical Giger fashion it looks like a giant phallus aimed right at the victim's face. It's even got the helmet-like shape at the end, and up close we can see flesh-like textures on it. Given that the facehugger is considered by screenwriter Dan O'Bannon as a facial rape metaphor, and was likely discussed in those terms with the director and with Giger himself, I think this is a larger-than-life representation of the facehugger impregnation as an oral rape. Just as Giger had designed a surrealist hieroglyphic showing all stages of the alien life cycle, I think this Space Jockey image is doing the same. And being that the alien's head is blatantly phallic, perhaps the giant elongated thing pointing at the victim's face here also represents the adult alien going in for the kill. It likes to bite into the face of its victims. And in the side-on design here we can see a thinner protrusion extending out of the larger one, and that's what happens with the bizarre biting tongue of the alien. We could also think of the big pipe protrusions here, the lines of three connections that are connecting the telescope to the body of the pilot. We could think of those as being equivalent to the alien arms grabbing at the victim as it bites it. And adding yet another layer of interpretation along similar lines, the Space Jockey was supposed to appear in a spherical room, but the film budget didn't allow for the full background to be built. If the telescope does double up as a phallus, then this could well be a metaphor of impregnation within a large womb, which would cast the pilot here as being like a fetus, the result of impregnation. In direct parallel to this, the mother computer on the Nostromo ship is in a womb-like flesh-coloured room, which Ridley Scott is reported to have called the womb room. Dallas sits in the chair to interface organically with the computer, and both of these sets have swivel chairs. So I think we also have a metaphor here of the humans of the story being, against their will, whether they realise it or not, fused with the Nostromo ship. They're dependent on it, and it's made clear throughout the story that they don't really like their jobs, and they are the enemy of the company that controls the ship, and so they are put into a bad position that they can't get out of. And so this Space Jockey seems to be a visual metaphor of that too, perhaps a representation of their predicament. So there you go, a symbolic interpretation of the Space Jockey. There's more I could add, but I just wanted to give you some food for thought regarding this incredible piece of design work, which to me is probably the greatest movie prop of all time. It is out of this world, and I love the irony that the symbolism here is hidden by the plot point that this thing is truly alien to mankind. But at the meta level, this design was created by the human mind of H.R. Giger, and therefore there is a logic to it. You've been listening to Rob Ager. Make sure to check out my other videos on Alien, which are available here on YouTube, and the more in-depth ones that are available on my website for digital download. I've just uploaded one today, actually, which is Alien the Corporate Monster, 35-minute video. You can get that as a digital download on my website today, and it's also available to my Patreon supporters as of today as well. So take your pick, Patreon or direct download from the site. Either way, you can get that video. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook for regular updates. All the links are in the video description below. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.